Hello, my name is Sean Gallagher. I'm 33 years old, and if you ask me about my life, I'd say it's like a bottle of craft whiskey. Rich, spicy, full of layers of flavors that you only fully appreciate when you savor it slowly, revealing all the complexity inside. I live in Bardstown, Kentucky, a small town known as the bourbon capital of the world, where the air is always faintly scented with the smell of charred oak and the heady yeast from aging barrels. That's where I built my little empire, Gallagher Spirits LLC, with the whiskey brand Aiden's Gold, a name that carries the soul of my grandfather, who taught me that whiskey isn't just a drink, but a story of buried dreams and their resurrection. Let me start from the beginning because everything stems from there. I was born into an Irish immigrant family who came to America hoping for a better life, but in reality it was just long days of hard labor. My father, Cormac Gallagher, was a construction worker with hands calloused from concrete and steel. He was tall, with a deep, warm voice but full of harshness, always reminding us that life isn't a dream, it's working to survive. My mother, Colleen, worked in a textile factory, sewing from dawn till dusk, her eyes weary but still managing a smile when she came home. They met at an Irish bar in Boston where immigrants gathered to reminisce about the homeland. They got married, had me, and then my two younger brothers, Liam, now 29, and Patrick, 27. We grew up in a small house on the outskirts of Boston, where dinner was often just cold cuts on bread and stories about the old days in Ireland. Our family was poor, so poor that Christmas meant just one gift to share among the three brothers. But poverty wasn't the biggest issue. It was the lack of faith. My parents always lived in fear of losing jobs, fear of illness, fear of any change. They taught us to choose the safe path, learn a trade, work as laborers, get married, have kids, and repeat the cycle. Liam, my younger brother, followed that exactly. He's a plumber now, always mocking me for my crazy ideas. Patrick is a bit different. He works as a supermarket clerk, but he's quieter, sometimes looking at me with hidden admiration. And me? I was always different. From a young age, I dreamed of bigger things, and that inspiration came from my grandfather, Aiden Gallagher. Grandpa Aiden was a true master whiskey distiller. He was born in Ireland, where whiskey is the lifeblood of the people. He said that back home, whiskey wasn't just alcohol, but the soul of the barley fields, of the drizzling rain and sea winds. He immigrated to America in the 1910s, bringing his family recipe, a special blend of Irish barley and refined distillation techniques, creating a smooth, spicy flavor with a hint of oak smoke. In America, he opened a small distillery in New York, and his whiskey quickly became famous in the Irish community. But then disaster struck, Prohibition in the 1930s. The U.S. government banned the production and sale of alcohol, turning people like my grandfather into criminals. He had to distill secretly in his basement, selling to speakeasies, living in constant fear of arrest. Eventually, he was discovered, lost everything, and had to flee to Boston with my grandmother. His career faded like a flame suddenly extinguished, leaving him with endless regret. I clearly remember those summer afternoons as a child when Grandpa sat in his rocking chair telling me stories. "Sean, whiskey is patience," he said, his voice hoarse with age. "It needs time to age for the flavors to seep in deeply. Life is the same, son." He taught me the family recipe step by step, how to select the best barley, how to distill slowly to preserve the essence, how to age in oak barrels to create those gentle vanilla and caramel notes. I'd sit beside him, inhaling the heady yeast scent from the small sample bottles he hid in the cabinet. Those moments were strangely warm, like a fire warming you in the dead of winter. Grandma Maura was always there, smiling gently. She was a typical Irish woman, red-haired with a warm smile, but a car accident had taken her hearing. She was profoundly deaf, nearly completely relying on sign language and lip reading to communicate. After Grandpa passed away from heart disease when I was 15, Grandma moved in with my parents. She became the silent one in the house, but to me she was a source of quiet strength. My childhood memories with my grandparents are the most beautiful. Grandma had a habit of sitting by the window knitting. Even though she couldn't hear, she talked to me through gestures, through hastily written notes. She told stories of Ireland through the pictures she drew, lush green fields, ancient castles, and whiskey bottles glistening in the sun. Grandpa taught me to mix simple drinks like Irish tea with a diluted splash of whiskey, of course not actually for kids to drink. I remember once he let me taste a drop of whiskey from the family bottle. That flavor, spicy, warm, awakened something in me. "This is Aiden's gold, son," he said. "Aiden's gold. One day you'll make it shine." Those words etched themselves into my mind, becoming my motivation when everything around me seemed against it. But as I grew up, things changed. When I went to college, majoring in chemistry at Boston University, my family started seeing me as an oddball. My parents thought college was a waste because workers like us don't need degrees. They wanted me to drop out and work like my brothers had. Liam dropped out early and always ridiculed me. "You think you're a genius? Studying chemistry for what, to make poison?" Patrick was quieter, but I knew he was influenced by the family atmosphere. Only Grandma was different. She'd sit beside me, hold my hand, and sign, "Follow your heart. I believe in you." In those moments, I didn't feel alone. The chemistry knowledge I learned about fermentation reactions, compound analysis, combined perfectly with Grandpa's recipe. I started experimenting in the garage, mixing small batches of whiskey, improving the formula to make it smoother, richer. That's when I realized I wanted to start a business to revive Aiden's gold. That decision exploded in my family. When I was 23 after graduating college, I used all my savings, about $10,000 from part-time jobs, and borrowed more from the bank to open a small distillery in Kentucky. I chose Bardstown because it's whiskey heaven, with pure water sources and a long distillation tradition. My parents were furious. "You're crazy, Sean," Dad yelled during dinner. "Wasting your youth chasing a stupid dream, whiskey? Who do you think you are, Aiden reborn?" Mom cried, saying I'd go bankrupt, become a burden on the family. Liam mocked. "My brother's about to be a whiskey millionaire." "Ha ha, dream on." Patrick looked at me with worry but said nothing. Only Grandma, with her sparkling eyes, signed, "You'll succeed." "I'm sure of it." I left Boston with a heavy heart, driving an old pickup truck loaded with a few barrels of ingredients and the family recipe. In Bardstown, I rented a small warehouse and started building Gallagher Spirits LLC. In the early days, I did everything myself, selecting barley, distilling, aging, even designing the bottle labels. Aiden's Gold, I named it in memory of Grandpa. Each bottle is a blend of ancient recipe and modern knowledge. I used chemistry to control pH, optimize fermentation, creating a unique flavor. A touch of Irish oak smoke mixed with Kentucky vanilla. But starting a business isn't a rosy dream. I was lonely, working 18 hours a day, sleeping on the warehouse floor surrounded by the heady yeast smell. Late at night, I'd think about my family, the scornful words, and wonder if I was wrong. Gradually, the company grew. I sold the first bottles to local bars, then expanded to other states. Now, at 33, I've grown Gallagher Spirits LLC to over 100 employees with millions in annual revenue. Our Aiden's Gold brand is praised by critics for its craftsmanship and authenticity, no additives like industrial whiskeys. I live in a cozy wooden house by the river with a private lab for testing new recipes. But that success doesn't erase the pain from my family. My parents still call occasionally, but mostly to check in, not to boast. Liam still mocks via texts. Patrick is friendlier but distant. Only Grandma, now 78, still living with my parents, is the one I video call often, signing fun stories. I'm telling all this not to complain, but because it's my foundation. My life is like whiskey. The longer it ages, the richer it gets, but also full of layers of bitterness. And now, as I've achieved success, I want to bring Grandma to live with me, to care for her as she encouraged me. But I never expected that decision would unleash a storm where my family, my closest loved ones, become the most dangerous enemies. Let me continue because the real story is just beginning. One autumn morning, as I sat at my desk looking out at the Kentucky River sparkling under the sun, Gallagher Spirits LLC was at its peak. We had just signed a distribution contract with a chain of upscale bars in New York, and Aiden's Gold was nominated for the Craft Whiskey Award of the Year. But amid those successes, I felt empty. I thought about my grandmother, the woman who had silently supported me through so many years. She was now 78 years old, living with my parents in Boston, in the cramped house where she had to use sign language to communicate with everyone. My parents were busy with work. Liam was selfish. Patrick tried, but it wasn't enough. She deserved better care, to live in a peaceful place with her beloved grandson. I picked up the phone, took a deep breath, and called Dad. "Sean," Dad Cormac's voice came through, a bit surprised. "It's been a while since you called. How's work?" "Good, Dad. I've been thinking. I want to bring Grandma to live with me in Kentucky. I have a big house, hired help, and I can take better care of her." There was silence for a moment. I heard Mom Colleen whispering something on the other end. Then Dad said, his voice strangely relieved, "Yeah, okay. She's old now. Taking care of her is tiring. If you want to take her, your mom and I agree. It'll lighten the load for the whole family." Lighten the load. Those words stung my heart like needles. Grandma wasn't a burden, she was a treasure. But I swallowed hard, not arguing. "Thanks, Dad. I'll fly to Boston this weekend to pick her up." When I hung up, I felt mixed emotions, happy that I'd soon be with her, but sad about my parents' attitude. They agreed so quickly, as if she were an item to be handed off. I pushed those thoughts aside and focused on preparations. I fixed up a bedroom for her, with a soft bed, a window overlooking the garden, and a rocking chair just like the one Grandpa used to sit in. I even bought a set of picture books about Ireland for her to look at to remember her homeland. That weekend, I flew to Boston. The family's old house was still the same. Musty smell, cluttered furniture. Grandma was sitting in the corner of the room, knitting with tired eyes. When she saw me, she smiled brightly and signed, "My grandson." I hugged her tightly, feeling her frail body. That day, my parents threw a small farewell dinner. Liam and Patrick stopped by too. Upon hearing that Grandma was moving in with me, Liam shook his head. "You're taking her where? Kentucky? She's old. How will she handle it?" Patrick quietly helped me carry the suitcase to the car, looking at me with gratitude. On the flight back to Bardstown, Grandma held my hand the whole way. She signed about old memories, about Grandpa, about whiskey. I told her about the company, about how Aiden's Gold was becoming popular. She nodded proudly, her eyes sparkling. When we arrived home, she stepped inside and inhaled the fresh air. "So beautiful," she signed, pointing to the river outside the window. In the early days, we lived peacefully. I taught her how to use an iPad to watch videos with subtitles, and she taught me ancient Irish dishes. Every evening, we sat by the fireplace. I told her about work, and she listened through signs and lip reading. I felt truly happy, like whiskey that had aged just right, ready to be savored. And then on a cool morning, I decided to take Grandma for a hearing checkup, hoping advanced medicine could somehow improve her hearing. The doctor at the local hospital was a hearing specialist. He examined her thoroughly. "Mrs. Mora has profound hearing loss from the old accident," he said. "But technology has advanced a lot now. She could regain most of her hearing through a cochlear implant." My heart pounded. "Cochlear implant? What's that, doctor?" He explained. "It's a medical device with internal and external parts. The internal part is surgically implanted in the inner ear, connecting to the auditory nerve, bypassing the damaged ear to send sounds directly to the brain. The external part is a sound processor worn behind the ear. The success rate is high," he said. "For adults like your grandmother, benefits are often seen immediately. The rejection rate is under 0.2%, and most patients experience significant improvements in hearing and speech." I looked at Grandma. She was trying to lip read the doctor. I signed an explanation and her eyes lit up. "Do you want to try it?" I asked. She hesitated for a moment, then signed. "If you think it's good, I'll do it. I want to hear your voice." That decision made me excited, mixed with anxiety. I imagined her hearing sounds after so many years of silence. Birds chirping, the river flowing, me calling Grandma. But I was also afraid. She was old. What if the surgery went wrong? We prepared carefully. I took her for a full health checkup to ensure she was fit enough. She smiled. "I'm strong, grandson, like your grandfather's whiskey." The surgery day arrived with pouring rain in Bardstown, as if signaling an impending storm. I drove her to the hospital, gripping the steering wheel tightly. She signed, "Don't worry, Sean. I'll be fine." In the waiting room, I paced back and forth, my heart beating like a drum. The 2-hour surgery dragged on slowly. Finally, the doctor came out smiling. "The surgery was successful. Your grandmother's awake now, just a bit tired." I rushed into the recovery room and saw her lying there, bandaged around her head. She opened her eyes and signed weakly, "I'm fine." I sat beside her, holding her hand, tears rolling down. "You'll hear, Grandma. You'll hear everything." The following days went smoothly. The incision healed quickly, no infection. I instructed the housekeeper to take extra care of her. Every evening after finishing work at the distillery, I would read books to her even though she couldn't hear yet. Grandma started smiling more, as if waiting for the miracle. 3 weeks later, we returned to the hospital to activate the device. The doctor attached the external part, a small device worn behind the ear connected to the internal part via a magnet. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded. He flipped the switch and the first sound came, a test beep. She startled, her eyes widening. I can hear," she signed, then tried speaking, her voice trembling after years of disuse. "Sean. Grandson." I hugged her, tears streaming down. She could hear my voice, hear laughter, hear the wind. We practiced every day. She learned to distinguish sounds from the doorbell to Irish music. She laughed loudly. "Sounds are so beautiful, Sean, like whiskey bubbling in the pot." I decided to keep this a secret, wanting to surprise the family at Christmas. I imagined their faces, shocked, then joyful. Grandma agreed, and let them be surprised. Then a few weeks before Christmas, Dad called. "Sean, let's all gather this year. Your mom and I invite you and Grandma back to Boston. Liam and Patrick will come too. It's been a while since we had a proper family dinner." I agreed immediately. "Sure, Dad. Grandma and I will come early." I told Grandma the news. She was thrilled. She said, "This time I'll get to hear my sons' and grandsons' voices again." I was just as excited as her. I pictured the scene. Mom, Dad, Liam, and Patrick falling over in surprise when they realized Grandma could hear them speak. It would surely be wonderful. But I didn't know that this invitation was actually a trap, and that Christmas would become a nightmare I'd never forget. On that Christmas day, Boston was plunged into a skin-cutting cold, with snow falling, blanketing everything in a layer of ice. Grandma and I arrived early, around noon on the 24th, to rest before the reunion dinner. My parents' old house hadn't changed, Christmas lights twinkling outside the door, the strong scent of pine wood. But the atmosphere inside was heavy like a barrel of whiskey overaged, with a lingering bitter taste. Grandma held my hand, her eyes shining with excitement. After the cochlear implant surgery, she could hear almost normally, but we kept it a secret, pretending she still communicated only through signs and lip reading. My parents greeted us with forced smiles. "Sean, you're back," Mom Colleen said, her voice a bit off. "How's Grandma?" Liam lounged on the sofa, beer can in hand, throwing me a mocking glance. "The whiskey tycoon is here. Brought any Aiden's Gold for your little brother to taste?" Patrick was different. He hugged Grandma and whispered, "I miss you so much, Grandma." I tried to smile, keeping the mood light, but deep down I felt a chill, like opening a bottle of whiskey and smelling something off. I had urgent business to handle, a call from the distillery in Bardstown about the end-of-year export shipment. I'll step out for a bit, about an hour, I told the family. Grandma, stay here, I'll be right back. Grandma nodded and signed, Go ahead, grandson. I'm fine. I kissed her forehead and drove to a nearby cafe for a video meeting. My heart felt uneasy leaving her behind, but I thought since she could hear now, she'd manage. I never expected that this short time away would unravel all the secrets. When I returned, it was pitch dark, the house lights blazing as if trying to hide something. The dinner table was set, roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, and prominently in the center a plate of Irish fruitcake, the traditional dessert Mom often made, covered in a smooth white icing. Everyone was seated around it, but the tension was like a taut string. Grandma sat in the corner, her expression strange, her eyes sharp and cold as if observing. Sit down, Sean, Dad Cormac said, his voice hurried. Eat, the food's getting cold. Dinner began and I tried to talk about the company, about Aiden's gold expanding, but the stories fell into silence. Liam smirked. Yeah, you're really something, but how can craft whiskey compete with the big corporations? Patrick ate slowly, avoiding eye contact. Then came dessert, the fruitcake plate. Mom cut slices, giving me a large portion with a sweet smile. Sean, this is the special part I made for you. Try it. It's delicious. But her eyes didn't meet mine, and her hand trembled slightly as she handed the plate. I picked up the plate, about to take a bite, when my phone buzzed lightly in my pocket. A text from Grandma. She had learned to text after the surgery. Don't eat the cake. Give it to your brother. My heart pounded like a drum. I glanced at her, seeing the urgency in her eyes, then she signed discreetly. Trust me. I swallowed, trying to act casual. Mom, the cake looks amazing, but I'm full. Liam, take my portion. You like sweets. I pushed the plate toward Liam with a forced smile. Liam shrugged, grabbed the piece, and took a big bite. Yeah, thanks, bro. Mom's cake is top-notch. He chewed greedily, white icing on his lips, looking both foolish and smug. We continued talking, but I noticed my parents glancing at each other repeatedly, Mom's hands clutching the napkin tightly. Just a few minutes later, Liam started changing. His eyes glazed over, a silly grin spreading on his face. Hey, why is the room spinning like this? He shook his head, his voice slurring like he was drunk. Mom, the cake. Is there something weird in the cake? Sean, did you put something in here? He tried to stand but staggered, grabbing the table, then chuckled idiotically, looking both pitiful and comical, like a clown who'd been tricked. My parents panicked. Liam, what's wrong with you? Mom said as she rushed to support him. Dad turned to me, his voice sharp. Sean, what are you doing? Mom went to the trouble of making that cake for you. Eat it now. I set the plate down, my heart racing, blood rushing to my head. No, Dad, I'm not eating it. What's in the cake? Explain yourselves. The atmosphere was suffocatingly silent. Patrick widened his eyes, looking from my parents to Liam, then to Grandma. Liam was still mumbling, his head dropping to the table. I'm so sleepy. Mom stammered. It's nothing, Sean. Liam probably drank too much beer. But her voice trembled, her eyes darting. Dad interjected, growling. Don't talk nonsense, Sean. Are you suspecting us? The cake Mom made is normal, just cake. I stood up abruptly, my voice cold. Normal? Then why is Liam acting like he just took a sedative? Mom, Dad, tell the truth. What's in the cake? Dad slammed the table. How dare you talk to us like that? Who do you think you are, some whiskey big shot lording it over us? Mom pulled Dad's arm, trying to calm him. Enough, Cormac, stay calm. Sean, you've misunderstood. There's nothing in the cake, really. Then Grandma stood up. Her voice rang out clear and strong, cutting through the tension. That's enough, Cormac, Colleen. I've heard everything. The whole family froze. Liam lifted his head, mouth agape, eyes watery as if waking from a dream. Patrick exclaimed, Grandma, when did you start speaking? Dad's face turned pale, his hand shaking so much he dropped his wine glass. Mom panicked, avoiding everyone's eyes, hastily bending down to wipe the table. Grandma's eyes sparkled, but her voice was firm. Thanks to Sean. He took me for cochlear implant surgery. I've been able to hear for months now. And I clearly heard you whispering in the kitchen when Sean stepped out. She pulled out her phone, her hand trembling as she pressed play, and the recording played, sharp and terrifying. Mom's voice, trembling but calculating, came from the speaker. We have to do it quick, Cormac. Just put the drug in Sean's cake, a light dose, enough to make him drowsy, and sign the papers. $1 million, think about it. We'd never make that much in our lifetime. Dad's voice followed, low and cautious. Yeah, but be careful. Don't let Maura or Patrick suspect. If Sean doesn't sign, they'll take the money back. The sound ended and the room felt drained of air. The silence was so profound I could hear the snow falling outside the window. Dad slammed the table, his face flushed. Mom! What are you doing? Recording us? You have no right. He pointed at her, growling like a cornered animal. This is my house. You can't do that. Mom grabbed my arm, her eyes welling with tears. Sean, don't misunderstand. There's no plot, it was just a joke. There's nothing in the cake, really. But her voice faltered as if she didn't believe her own words. A joke? I stood up abruptly, the chair crashing behind me. My heart pounded, blood rushing to my head. A joke, and Liam sitting there, his mind spinning like he drank a whole bottle of sedative. Do you think I'm that stupid? I pointed at Liam, who was muttering, Mom, Dad, what is this? The cake. What kind of cake is this? He tried to lift his head, but his eyes drooped, mouth grinning foolishly, looking both wretched and comical, like a clown in a tragicomedy. Dad yelled, Don't get high and mighty with us, Sean. Who do you think you are, a whiskey tycoon? We're doing all this for the family, for this house. Do you know how much we've suffered? He panted, his hands clenched as if wanting to punch the air. Mom sobbed, her voice shrill. Sean, you don't understand. We've been poor for too long. We just wanted a chance. They came to us, gave us money, said all you had to do was sign a contract. What contract? I cut in, my voice icy. Tell me, what's in the cake? What contract requires drugging your own son? Grandma raised her hand, signaling silence. Enough, she said, her voice low but sharp. Sean, let me tell you. Your parents were plotting in the kitchen, thinking I couldn't hear. I've been deaf and mute for years, but now I hear every word. Your mom and dad took $1 million from a rival company to force you to sign a contract using their exclusive ingredients. The goal was to destroy Aiden's gold, your grandfather's legacy. She paused, her eyes red as she turned to my parents. You sold out your own son, sold your soul and dignity, all for money. As soon as she finished, Mom burst into tears, kneeling on the floor. I was wrong, Sean. I didn't think it was that serious. They said it was just a business contract, that you'd still make money, just work with them. But she wouldn't look at me, her eyes glued to the floor as if trying to escape. Dad still tried to defend. Sean, you don't understand. They threatened us. If we didn't do it, they'd ruin my job, Liam's. We had no choice. But his voice weakened, as if he realized how flimsy the excuse was. Patrick jumped up, slamming his hand on the table, making the glasses rattle. Enough, Mom, Dad. Sean poured his blood, sweat, and tears into building that company, and what did you do? Sell him out for $1 million? I'm ashamed to be your son. He turned to me, his eyes red as if sharing my burden. I held Grandma's hand, my heart aching like it was being cut by a knife. Mom, Dad, do you think money is more important than your son? Aiden's Gold isn't just a company, it's Grandpa's dream, my dream. You wanted to destroy it, destroy me? My voice faltered, not from weakness, but from rage mixed with pain. Grandma hugged me, her voice choked. Let's go, Sean. This isn't home anymore. I led her to the door, Patrick following without looking back. Liam remained seated, his head slumped on the table, muttering, The cake. Mom, why is the cake so spicy? He looked like an abandoned child, both pitiable and blameworthy, but I had no mind left to care. The snow fell heavily as we stepped outside, the wind cutting cold. Christmas, the day of reunion, shattered like a whiskey bottle dropped on the floor, shards scattered everywhere. I drove Grandma to the hotel, my heart heavy. But I knew the storm hadn't stopped. The rivals were waiting, and the real business battle was just beginning. Thinking back, my heart still pounds, both in pain and fury, like a fire that burns eternally. The days following Christmas, I returned to Bardstown with Grandma and Patrick, trying to wash away the memory of that horrific night. But the storm hit faster than I expected, catching me off guard. One morning, I opened my phone to a flood of notifications from employees and partners. A social media post from an anonymous account was spreading like wildfire. Aiden's Gold, craft whiskey or a scam? Unclear ingredient sources, questionable quality. The post included fake images, forged invoices suggesting Gallagher Spirits LLC imported low-quality barley from an unknown supplier. The comments below were a raging inferno. Thought it was craft. Turns out it's junk. Don't buy, it's a scam. My heart pounded, my hands trembling as I read. This wasn't random. It was a calculated attack. I immediately called the marketing team. Trace the source of this post, find out who's behind it, I ordered, trying to keep my voice calm. But deep down I knew the culprit, the rival my parents mentioned, a notorious industrial liquor conglomerate known for dirty tactics. They didn't just want me to sign a contract, they wanted to destroy Aiden's Gold. Within 3 days, 2 major suppliers pulled out, and Aiden's Gold sales dropped by 20%. I felt like I was standing on a sinking ship, water pouring in while I had only 2 hands to plug the holes. I gathered the team at the distillery, trying to rally them. We've done nothing wrong. This is a dirty move by our competitors. We'll prove Aiden's Gold's quality. But the employees' eyes were filled with worry. A young woman from sales asked, "Boss, if they keep spreading lies, can we survive?" I forced a smile. We'll survive. Our whiskey is real gold, not fake. But that night in the lab, as I tasted a new batch of whiskey, I sensed bitterness, not from the drink, but from the fear of failure. I hired a PR firm to respond. They posted a rebuttal on our website and social media detailing Aiden's Gold's production process. Organic barley from reputable farms, oak barrels sourced from Kentucky and Ireland, handcrafted distillation with a family recipe. I even live-streamed from the distillery, guiding viewers through every step, from grinding barley to aging, to prove our transparency. Some customers supported us, but bad news spreads faster than good. A major distributor in Chicago canceled their contract, saying they didn't want the risk. I sat alone by the river, watching the water flow, wondering if I had the strength to fight this giant. Then one rainy afternoon, the doorbell rang. I opened the door, stunned to see my parents standing there, soaked to the bone, looking haggard. Dad, usually tall and stern, now looked 10 years older. Mom clutched her coat, eyes red. "Sean," she said, her voice hoarse, "we need to talk." I wanted to slam the door, but Grandma stepped out from the living room. "Let them in. Let's hear what they have to say." I gritted my teeth and led them inside. The atmosphere was heavy, like before a storm. Dad sat on the sofa, hands gripping his knees. "We returned the money," he said, his voice trembling. "That $1 million, we sent it back to them right after Christmas. But they wouldn't let it go. They demanded double, $2 million, or they'd sue us, ruin my job, Liam's." Mom cut in, her voice breaking. "They threatened us, Sean. Said they'd expose us as criminals, that we tried to poison you. We're scared, we're poor, we can't afford to pay. They also said they'd make things harder for your company." She cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We were wrong, Sean. Greed blinded us. But we're sorry, truly." I stood there, hands gripping the chair, blood rushing to my head. "Sorry?" I snapped. "You think an apology fixes this? You drugged my cake to force me to sign a contract that would destroy my company. Now you're in trouble and come begging for help? Why should I help?" I turned away, staring out the window, trying to suppress my anger. The image of Liam dazed, Mom's voice in the recording, all came flooding back like a knife cutting through me. Dad stood up, his voice growling. Sean, you don't understand. We're family. Do you think we wanted this? They forced us. They're powerful. If you don't help, our whole family will be ruined. Mom sobbed. Sean, I'm begging you. I know we were wrong, but I don't want to lose everything. You're my son, please. I turned back, looking straight into their eyes. Family? You call that family when you sold me out for money? Aiden's gold is my life's blood, Grandpa's dream, and you were ready to crush it. My voice broke not from weakness, but from the pain of betrayal. Grandma put her hand on my shoulder, her voice calm but firm. Sean, calm down. They're wrong, but they're your parents. I see their fear, their genuine regret. She looked at them, her eyes both stern and forgiving. They returned the money, that's a start. Help them not because they deserve it, but because you're stronger than that. Don't let hatred make you like them. I fell silent. Her words hit me like a shot of sharp whiskey, waking me up. I thought of Grandpa, of the nights he told stories in the basement, how he always said, whiskey is patience, is forgiveness. I took a deep breath and turned to my parents. Fine, I'll help, but not because you deserve it, for Grandma and for myself. But there's a condition. You cooperate fully, tell me everything about this rival. Who contacted you, how they paid, what they said. If not, I won't lift a finger. They looked at each other, then nodded. Dad said, his voice hoarse. They're from Blackwood Distillery, an industrial liquor conglomerate. A guy named Victor Crane contacted us, gave cash, promised to lift our family out of poverty. We were too blind. Mom added, we kept the bank transfer receipts, even Crane's messages. I nodded, my heart still heavy, but now with a direction. Good, give me all the evidence. We'll use it to turn the tables. I looked at Grandma. She smiled. My grandson, strong like your grandfather's whiskey. In the following days, I started planning. Blackwood Distillery. I knew them, a giant in the industry, infamous for dirty tactics to swallow craft brands. I called the PR team, asking them to pause public responses and focus on gathering information. I contacted an old law school friend, asking him to find a lawyer skilled in unfair competition cases. I knew that to take down Blackwood, I needed evidence, strategy, and patience, like aging a perfect batch of whiskey. Meanwhile, Blackwood's pressure intensified. They released more articles accusing Aiden's Gold of violating food safety regulations. Another supplier pulled out, and a major client in Texas canceled an order. I worked 18 hours a day, calling partners, sending whiskey samples for independent testing to prove quality. But every night, sitting by the fireplace, I felt like I was fighting an invisible monster. My parents stayed in Bardstown for a few days, providing more details. Victor Crane met them in a seedy Boston bar, gave half the money in cash, half by transfer, and a fake contract. They still had Crane's business card with Blackwood Distillery's logo. I carefully stored it all like pieces of a larger puzzle. One evening, I went to Grandma's room, needing her encouragement like the days I struggled during startup. She told me about Ireland, how Grandpa faced hardships during Prohibition. Your grandfather never gave up, even when the world was against him, she said, her voice warm. You're the same, Sean. This is a fight for Aiden's Gold, for your grandfather, and for yourself. I nodded, feeling the fire in my heart reignite. Blackwood wanted to break me, but they didn't know that my whiskey and my will had been aged through bitterness, ready to erupt. The storm was still coming, but I was ready. This fight wasn't just for the company, but for family and even those who betrayed me. I knew the days ahead would be long and dark, but as Grandpa once said, the best whiskey is aged under pressure, and I, Sean Gallagher, would not let that fire go out. Sitting in the small office at Gallagher Spirits LLC, I gazed out at the Kentucky River shimmering under the moonlight. The days after Christmas were a whirlwind of chaos, rumors spreading, suppliers pulling out, customers growing skeptical. Blackwood Distillery, the industrial liquor giant behind it all, didn't just want to force me into an exclusive distribution contract. They wanted to swallow Aiden's Gold whole. the legacy of my grandfather, my dream. But they underestimated me. I was no longer the trembling Boston boy cowed by family taunts. I had been forged through bitterness like whiskey aged in charred oak barrels. An idea sparked in my mind, dangerous but worth a shot. I would meet Victor Crane pretending to surrender as if ready to sell Aiden's gold. If I could make him overconfident, he might let something slip. I called Dad, asking him to contact Crane and say I wanted to negotiate. He hesitated. "Sean, this is dangerous. If they realize you're setting a trap..." I cut him off. "Dad, this is the only way. If you're truly sorry, help me." He went silent, then agreed. I shared the plan with Grandma. She held my hand, encouraging me. "Be careful, Sean. They're vipers, but I know you're no pushover." I nodded, my heart pounding like before a battle. The meeting was set at an upscale bar in Louisville where dim lights and the scent of cigars mingled. I brought a hidden recording pen in my jacket pocket. I arrived early, scanning my surroundings. 15 minutes later, Victor Crane walked in, tall, dressed in a black suit with a smug smile like someone certain of victory. He was about 50, silver-haired, with eyes sharp as knives. "Sean Gallagher," he said, shaking my hand with a grip meant to crush. "Heard you want to talk business?" His voice was smooth, but I caught the arrogance beneath it. I sat down, ordering a glass of Aiden's Gold, not to drink, but to remind him I was still proud of my whiskey. "Victor, I'm tired," I said, faking a sigh. "Rumors, pressure from suppliers. Blackwood wants Aiden's Gold, right? Name your price. I'll consider selling." I looked him in the eye, feigning exhaustion. Crane smirked, sipping his bourbon. "Smart move, Sean. You can't fight us. Blackwood isn't just a company, we're an empire. I offer $45 million for Aiden's Gold. Cheap for its value, but you know, your brand's sinking fast." He laughed, his tone dripping with mockery. "Investing in your company now is a huge risk, but call it charity." I clenched my teeth, pretending to waver. $45 million. My company's worth double. And I know you're behind the rumors. You pressured my suppliers, didn't you? I raised my voice deliberately, as if angry but helpless. Crane laughed loudly, overly confident. "You're sharper than I thought, but before you accuse anyone, you need proof, kid. This is the business world. The strong devour the weak. It's only natural." He shrugged, as if talking about the weather. My heart pounded like facing a cunning snake. I pressed the trap further, my voice trembling falsely. "Did you bribe my parents?" "You're despicable. If I don't sell, what's next? More rumors? Destroy my company until it's bankrupt?" Crane leaned in, his voice lowering, full of menace. "Exactly. We have money, connections. If you don't sign, we'll make Aiden's Gold vanish. Suppliers will ditch you, customers will turn away, and the press will keep digging. You think you're a hero? This isn't Hollywood, Sean." He sneered, then stood, patting my shoulder. "Think it over. $45 million or nothing." I stood, locking eyes with him. "Thanks for the offer, Victor, but I'd rather burn Aiden's Gold than sell to vultures like you." My voice was ice cold, no longer pretending. Crane froze, his face flushing red. "You'll regret this, Gallagher," he roared, slamming his glass on the table, drawing glances from others in the bar. "Blackwood will crush you." I left the bar, my heart racing but my mind lighter. The pen in my pocket had recorded everything. Crane's admission of bribery, sabotage, and plans to destroy Aiden's Gold. I drove home, hands trembling with excitement. When I walked in, Grandma and Patrick were waiting. "How'd it go?" she asked, voice anxious. I smiled. "We've got the evidence we need." I sent the recording to my friend that night. Melissa, my childhood friend, now a lawyer, and Jack, an upright investigator I always trusted. Melissa listened and nearly shouted over the phone. "Sean, this is gold, a direct admission from Blackwood's representative. We can sue them for bribery, unfair competition, and commercial sabotage." Jack was calmer. "Well done, Sean, but be careful. Blackwood won't sit still when they know you have this." In the following days, I worked tirelessly with Melissa and Jack, preparing the lawsuit. We contacted Maggie and Hank, entrepreneurs who'd gone bankrupt due to Blackwood's dirty games. I convinced them to provide more evidence of Blackwood's past attacks. Maggie, now working at a small bar, agreed to testify. "Sean, I lost everything because of Blackwood," she said, voice choking. "If you can take them down, I'm in." I also prepared a media campaign. I reached out to a reputable journalist at Whiskey Advocate, sending a copy of the recording and Jack's documents. "This isn't just my story," I told the journalist. "It's about how big corporations crush craft whiskey makers." He agreed to write the article, promising to publish at the right moment. The battle wasn't over, but I felt I was gaining the upper hand. Blackwood might be a giant, but I had evidence, allies, and most importantly, the fire my grandfather passed down. The fire of whiskey, patience, and resolve. I knew the final battle was coming soon, and I was ready to protect Aiden's gold at all costs. In the days following my meeting with Victor Crane, I worked like a machine, sleeping no more than 4 hours a night. The Gallagher Spirits LLC distillery in Bardstown became my fortress, where I and my team planned our counterattack. I felt Blackwood's pressure like a cold wind blowing across the Kentucky River, but this time I wasn't afraid. I had Crane's recorded admission, the bank transfer receipts to my parents, and Jack's documents detailing Blackwood's sabotage of Maggie and Hank. They were like loaded bullets waiting for the right moment to fire. And then, we fired the first shot once all the ammunition was ready. Whiskey Advocate published an article titled, "Blackwood Distillery, Liquor Empire Exposed for Bribery and Sabotage." The article quoted Victor Crane from the recording. "We encouraged your suppliers to walk away, like we did with Maggie in Virginia or Hank in Oregon." They publicized the $1 million transfer receipts to my parents and Jack's files on Blackwood's past sabotage. A reporter named Ryan interviewed Maggie, who shared her pain of losing her company. "Blackwood destroyed my dream. Sean's fighting for all of us." The article spread like wildfire. Major outlets like the New York Times and Forbes picked up the story, framing it broadly. The battle between craft whiskey and industrial giants. Social media exploded. The hashtag Save Aiden's Gold trended everywhere, with thousands sharing my story, calling Blackwood the bullies of the liquor industry. One user wrote, "Aiden's Gold is true craft whiskey. Blackwood only knows money, not art." I read it with tears in my eyes, not from pride, but from knowing I wasn't alone. Authorities quickly stepped in. The Federal Trade Commission, FTC, launched an investigation into Blackwood for unfair competition and bribery. Kentucky, where Blackwood had a major plant, suspended their distribution license for review. Blackwood's stock on the New York Stock Exchange plummeted, losing 30% of its value in 3 days. Major distributors, once coerced by Blackwood, reached out to me again. Tom, the barley farm owner, called. "Sean, I'm sorry for doubting you. Your barley is still the best. Shall we continue?" I smiled, my voice catching. "Thanks, Tom. We'll make the finest whiskey yet." My family was kept safe. Jack arranged a private security firm to protect Grandma, my parents, and my brothers. Still, I couldn't help but worry that Blackwood might retaliate. Melissa reassured me. "With the public's eyes and the FTC watching, they won't dare touch you or your family." I felt more at ease, focusing on clearing Aiden's Gold's name. The craft whiskey community rallied behind me like an army. The American Craft Spirits Association, ACSA, organized an event in Louisville inviting me to speak. Before hundreds of producers, I shared Aiden's Gold story about my grandfather, about whiskey crafted with patience. When I mentioned Blackwood, the room erupted in applause. A small producer from Tennessee shook my hand. "Sean, you're an inspiration. We won't let Blackwood win." I returned home that night, sat by the fireplace, and felt the fire in my heart burn brighter than ever. But the most unexpected moment came from my parents. One morning, as I was checking whiskey barrels, my phone rang. It was Mom, her voice trembling. "Sean, we want to see you. Your dad and we want to apologize publicly on the media." I was stunned. "Publicly? Are you sure?" Dad cut in. Sean, we owe you. We were wrong and we want to make it right. They flew to Bardstown and we met Ryan at a small Whiskey Advocate studio. The cameras lit up, the atmosphere tense like before a battle. Dad, his face haggard, looked into the camera. I'm Cormac Gallagher, Sean's father. My wife and I made a grave mistake. We took money from Blackwood Distillery to pressure our son into signing a contract that would ruin his company. Greed blinded us and we're sorry to Sean, sorry to the craft whiskey community. He paused, his voice choking. Sean, you're the pride of our family, even if we didn't see it before. Mom, crying, held Dad's hand and faced the camera. Sean, I'm sorry. I don't deserve to be your mother. You cared for Grandma, built Aiden's Gold from nothing, and we betrayed you. I only hope you can forgive us. I sat there, my heart aching but also relieved. I said nothing, just nodded, but inside I knew I had forgiven them. The interview aired and the public's response surprised me. Instead of condemning my parents, many expressed sympathy. One comment read, "Every family makes mistakes. Sean forgiving them is admirable." Aiden's Gold received hundreds of new orders from across the US and even Europe. A bar in Ireland emailed, "We want to stock Aiden's Gold. Your whiskey is the true soul of Ireland." Blackwood crumbled. The FTC imposed a $10 million fine and several major distributors cut ties with them. Victor Crane was fired and rumors spread that he was under criminal investigation. I began to feel relief as justice was finally served. The battle had calmed for now, but I knew the whiskey industry was always turbulent. And I, Sean Gallagher, was now stronger, ready for any storm that came next. After months of relentless fighting, I could finally take a moment to breathe and relax. Every evening I took Grandma for a walk by the river. She held my hand. "You've made your grandfather proud, Sean." I smiled, feeling her warmth, like a fire warming the winter cold. After everything settled, I decided to fulfill a long-standing promise to Grandma, to take her back to Ireland, the homeland of my grandparents where the story of Aiden's Gold began. I booked plane tickets, packed our bags, and one spring morning we set off. Grandma, now 79, was brimming with vitality when the plane landed in Dublin. "Sean, I can hear Ireland," she said, her voice trembling through the cochlear implant as a street vendor sang a folk song. I held her hand, feeling like I was stepping into an old book Grandpa used to tell stories from. We rented a small car and drove through the lush green fields of County Cork, where Grandpa Aiden grew up. I took her to the small village of Glendalough, where he learned to distill whiskey from his father. The family's old house was gone, but Grandma pointed to a path leading to a barley field. "This is where your grandfather stood, smelling the earth and barley," she said, her eyes sparkling. We stood there, breathing in the cool air, listening to the wind rustling through the grass. I pulled out a bottle of Aiden's Gold from my bag, pouring a little into 2 small glasses I'd brought. "To Grandpa," I said, raising my glass. She smiled, clinking hers with mine. "To Aiden, and to you." The trip lasted 2 weeks. We visited famous distilleries like Jameson and Bushmills, where master distillers eyed my Aiden's Gold with curiosity. One of them tasted it, nodding. "You've brought Ireland's soul to America, Sean." I smiled, thinking of Grandpa. He'd be so proud. But the most meaningful moment was when I took Grandma to the cliffs of Moher. She stood there, silver hair blowing in the wind, listening to the waves crashing against the rocks. "I never thought I'd hear this sound again," she said, tears streaming down her face. I hugged her, feeling her warmth like an eternal flame. During the trip, I received messages from my parents. After their public apology in the media, they tried to stay in touch more often, sending family photos and asking about Grandma and me. Once Mom called via video while we were at a small pub in Galway. "Sean, I miss you," she said, her voice choking. "We're trying to make things right. Will you come visit?" I looked at Grandma, who nodded slightly, signing. "They're family, Sean. Don't close the door completely." I took a deep breath and replied, "I'll visit, Mom." My relationship with my parents slowly improved, but I learned to keep my distance. I didn't want them to take advantage of my forgiveness, to repeat the mistake of that Christmas. Liam, after recovering from his daze from the cake, texted an apology. I was an idiot. I didn't know about Mom and Dad's plan. I replied briefly, "It's okay, Liam. Start over." Patrick was different. He stayed in Bardstown, working at my distillery, becoming my right-hand man. "Sean, I want to learn to make whiskey," he said once, his eyes shining. I smiled, patting his shoulder. "Be patient. Like aging whiskey." Back in Bardstown, I sat in my office, looking at the bottle of Aiden's Gold on my desk. I thought about my journey, from the boy mocked by his family in Boston to the man standing tall against both enemies and kin. The battle with Blackwood taught me more than any classroom ever could. I wrote down those thoughts, like a life philosophy, to remind myself and share with others fighting for their dreams. The first lesson I learned is that belief and perseverance are an entrepreneur's greatest assets. When the world turns its back, family mocking, rivals attacking, customers doubting, belief in yourself is the fire that keeps you standing. For me, it was belief in Grandpa's recipe, in the vanilla and oak smoke flavor of Aiden's Gold. Despite Blackwood's rumors, despite suppliers abandoning me, I didn't give up because I knew my whiskey was true gold. The second lesson is about family. Families can be wrong, but the moment you choose to forgive is when you free yourself and save yourself. My parents betrayed me, but when I chose to forgive, I felt lighter. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means opening a path to move forward. I forgave my parents, but I set boundaries to protect myself and Aiden's Gold. And the third, most crucial lesson: success isn't just about money, but about standing tall against both enemies and family when they turn against you. Blackwood had money and power, but they didn't have my fire. My parents once sided with the enemy, but I didn't fall. My success is seeing Aiden's Gold on shelves in Ireland, hearing Grandma listen to the waves at the cliffs of Moher, watching Patrick stand beside me in the distillery learning to craft whiskey. Those are victories greater than any bank account balance. I stood up, opened the bottle of Aiden's Gold, and poured a small glass. I took a sip, feeling the sharp warmth slide down my throat, carrying the essence of barley, oak, and Grandpa's dream. Outside, the Kentucky River shimmered under the moonlight, reminding me that every storm passes. Aiden's Gold isn't just whiskey. It's my story, my family's story of scars and triumphs. And I, Sean Gallagher, will keep aging it with all the patience and fire in my heart, 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 in my heart,